Every morning, hundreds of seniors begin their day in the same familiar way, reaching for slices of white bread or bowls of sugary cereals. These foods might seem innocuous, even comforting, but they are quietly setting a deadly trap. When consumed, these refined carbs cause rapid blood sugar spikes that soar within 10 to 15 minutes, often reaching levels 2 to 3 times higher than normal. This sudden surge floods the bloodstream with glucose, and the body responds by releasing a flood of insulin. Over time, this repeated cycle of sharp blood sugar increases, and insistent insulin production create a chronic inflammatory response inside the lining of the arteries. What many don't realize is that this inflammation begins to damage the delicate endothelial cells that form the inner walls of blood vessels, causing tiny tears or micro-injuries that are often invisible but dangerous. These micro-tears become perfect footholds for fatty deposits and cholesterol, early plaque, beginning a slow and stealthy invasion into the arterial walls. Over subsequent months, these micro-injuries perpetuate a vicious cycle. Each spike from the morning carbohydrate intake contributes to further damage, and the tiny tears accumulate, making arteries less flexible and narrowing their lumen gradually. The arteries do not become dangerously blocked overnight, but become stiffer, less capable of accommodating fluctuations in blood pressure or flow. Blood flow becomes subtly impaired, often without symptoms. Many seniors remain unaware that their arteries are becoming increasingly compromised as the plaque begins to form. The process is insidious because the narrowing is often less than 20% in the early stages, so the reduction in blood supply remains below the threshold for symptoms like chest pain or dizziness. Meanwhile, the ongoing inflammation and micro-tears create a fragile environment where a vulnerable plaque can form, a fatty deposit covered by a thin cap, just waiting for the right trigger. Months or even years later, a critical moment arrives. One evening, a patient might suddenly show signs of a severe stroke or collapse without warning. The cause lies deep within the arterial walls. Inflammation weakens the structure of the plaque's protective cap, turning it into an unstable and fragile threat. When the thin cap ruptures, a cascade is triggered. A large blood clot, called a thrombus, rapidly forms at the rupture site. This clot can quickly grow and seal off a major artery, effectively cutting off oxygen to the brain in seconds. The victim might be fine one moment and unconscious the next, with little to no warning signs. This sudden occlusion due to clot formation causes a catastrophic infarction, leading to a massive stroke that can result in permanent disability or death. What makes this even more alarming is that the entire process occurs silently over years, with the actual rupture and clot formation happening within seconds. The danger lies precisely in the fact that these damaging blood sugar spikes and micro-injuries build up beneath the surface, often undetectable until the final catastrophic event occurs. Over the following weeks, more seniors begin to exhibit puzzling symptoms that often go unnoticed or are dismissed as minor. Some experience sudden fainting spells that last only a few seconds, causing them to clutch onto furniture or walls for support. Others complain of brief, sharp chest discomfort that feels like a fleeting pressure or tightness, often attributed to indigestion or fatigue. These subtle signs reveal the dangerous reality happening beneath the surface. The tiny, fragile plaques inside their arteries are growing from small, stable deposits into unstable, ticking time bombs. The caps covering these plaques weaken as inflammation persists, making rupture more likely with each passing day. Without warning, a plaque's thin, fibrous cap can suddenly give way when subjected to a minor blood flow disturbance or an increase in blood pressure during routine activities. The rupture exposes the inner contents, triggering a rapid cascade of clot formation. Blood rushing to seal the rupture enlarges the clot, which can quickly grow big enough to completely sequester a vital artery. In many cases, this happens silently. The rupture and clot formation take place within seconds, and unless a catastrophic event occurs immediately, there are often no warning signs at all until the artery becomes completely blocked. When that occurs, the brain or heart is suddenly starved of oxygen, and the victim's condition rapidly deteriorates. Family members might find their loved ones unresponsive in the morning, or they might be awakened by a loud, agonized cry. The tragedy strikes suddenly, and for many it is the last moment they ever breathe or see their loved ones alive. Medical teams later discover that the process leading to these deadly events is almost always connected to years of unrecognized artery damage caused by steady, repeated blood sugar spikes from daily diets heavy in processed carbohydrates. The smallest daily intake of refined carbs, such as the 2 slices of white bread with breakfast or a bowl of sugary cereal every morning, is enough to set this chain reaction in motion. Over months, these tiny, seemingly insignificant meals cause repeated endothelial injury, weakening the arterial walls and promoting the formation of unstable plaques. Each micro-injury adds a layer of vulnerability, bringing the artery closer to rupture with every spike of blood sugar. The pattern becomes painfully clear when examining victims' dietary histories. Almost all had high consumption of processed carbs like white bread, pastries, or sugary snacks, often paired with little to no physical activity. These small daily indulgences fuel an invisible process, each carbohydrate molecule feeding the fragile plaque's instability, so that a seemingly harmless routine turns into an imminent threat. The danger is not only in the gradual deterioration, but in the unseen moments when these plaques rupture, unleashing a cascade of life-ending consequences. Medical examiners note that the blood vessels of these victims are riddled with tiny, unstable plaques that teeter on the brink of catastrophe. The instability is compounded by chronic inflammation, which persists silently, eroding the protective fibrous cap over the plaque. The combination of ongoing inflammation, micro tears from tiny blood flow fluctuations, and the fragile nature of the deposits makes rupture almost inevitable without intervention. The precise timing of these events remains unpredictable. A normal day can suddenly turn deadly when a plaque weakens beyond its capacity to withstand even a minor surge in blood pressure caused by routine activity or emotional stress. The resulting rupture unleashes a chain reaction of clot formation that can occlude an artery in seconds. This silent process, progressing over months or years, makes it all the more dangerous because warning signs are often absent until it is too late. The tragedy is compounded by the fact that these subtle vessel injuries are exceedingly difficult to detect without advanced imaging, and standard blood tests only show the damage after a catastrophic event has occurred. The only way to prevent such tragedy is to address the root cause, reducing daily intake of processed carbs to less than 50 grams per day, avoiding white bread, pastries, and sugary cereals entirely, and replacing them with low glycemic options like oatmeal cooked at exactly 110 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes, topped with berries and a handful of walnuts. This small but critical change reduces inflammation, strengthens blood vessel walls, and stabilizes existing plaques, keeping the fragile deposits in check and preventing rupture before disaster strikes. Over months and years, these tiny, seemingly harmless plaques inside arteries evolve into silent killers, each one more unstable and fragile than the last. Early on, they are just minute deposits of fat, cholesterol, and cellular debris, barely detectable and causing no symptoms. But as early blood sugar spikes occur daily from refined carbohydrate-rich breakfasts like white bread or sugary cereals, they trigger an ongoing inflammatory response. This inflammation gradually erodes the protective fibrous cap that covers each plaque, weakening its structure. Tiny micro tears form in the endothelial lining, creating perfect sites for further fatty deposits to settle and accumulate. Over time, these deposits grow larger, their fragile caps increasingly vulnerable to rupture. What appears as a stable deposit becomes a ticking time bomb, silently teetering on the brink of catastrophe. As the inflammatory cycle persists, these plaques become more unstable, yet remain undetected with standard blood tests or routine checkups. Many seniors remain unaware that each slice of white bread or spoonful of sugary cereal they consume is feeding this invisible chain reaction, fueling the growth of unstable deposits deep within their arterial walls. The danger is not just in the slow buildup, but in the potential for sudden rupture, which can unleash a large clot in seconds. When these micro tears become critical and the plaque's cover gives way, a rapid cascade of clot formation occurs. This thrombus can swiftly occlude a major artery, causing a catastrophic stroke or heart attack without any warning signs. These events often happen silently, with the victim feeling perfectly fine until sudden collapse or unconsciousness strikes. Medical examiners reveal that after autopsies of many seniors who died unexpectedly, The common factor was arteries riddled with dangerous, fragile plaques. These stable yet unstable deposits had been quietly aging for years, primed to rupture at the slightest provocation. What had begun as minor daily dietary choices, slices of white bread, pastries, or sweetened cereals, had set this deadly process in motion. The small, routine intake of refined carbs over months transformed into an unstoppable chain reaction of endothelial injury, plaque instability, and, ultimately, rupture. It is profoundly unsettling to realize that these deposits have been developing unnoticed beneath the surface, their instability growing with each identical breakfast. When a rupture finally occurs, the resulting clot rapidly expands, sealing off an entire artery and depriving vital organs of oxygen. The sudden loss of blood flow triggers a massive, often fatal stroke or cardiac event. The victims who survive often carry lifelong disabilities, but many never wake up again. The tragic part is that many of these patients' last words or reflections point directly to their daily routines, particularly breakfasts laden with processed carbs that have subtly but surely been destroying their arteries from age 30 or 40. The simple truth is that avoiding these foods and replacing them with low glycemic options, such as cooking oatmeal at exactly 110 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes and topping it with a handful of blueberries and walnuts every morning, could significantly fortify blood vessels. This small but critical change reduces inflammation, stabilizes existing plaques, and prevents these fragile deposits from rupturing, potentially saving thousands of lives from sudden, silent, and irreversible demise.